Welcome to the 5th grade Mathematics Florida Standards. This presentation will give you general information about the Mathematics Florida Standards, as well as specific information about the Grade 5 Standards. This publication was made possible by a grant from Carnegie Corporation of New York. The statements made and views expressed are solely the responsibility of the author. Why have new math standards? New standards should help our kids dig deeper, so they can explain a concept or how they got to an answer and develop their potential to think more critically and creatively. Any new standard should reflect best practices of schools, states, and countries around the world, because our kids deserve the best education we can give them. In addition, the point of setting standards for what children should know at the end of each year is so we know when kids are ready to move on to the next level, or are falling behind so we can help them catch up rather than give up. Just as every patient deserves a doctor whose knowledge is up to date, who knows the latest technology, every child deserves an education that's current and teaches them the technologies and the ability to learn new ones they'll need to succeed. Educational standards in America need to match or exceed the standards for the best performing countries in the world. Education should be about standards, not standardized tests. Those standards should set the bar high, but be similar enough across schools so if your family takes a job across the country, is in the military and moves around, or just buys a home in a neighboring district, your child isn't either bored or disadvantaged because they don't know what's going on. That's why the states work together to develop standards for what kids ought to know by the end of each year, learning from teachers, parents, and employers, but also from the best performing schools, states, and countries, so our kids will be able to compete in a global world. Standards don't tell any state, school, or teacher how to teach or what curriculum to use. That way, teachers can continue to use their knowledge and expertise and innovate in their classrooms, and when something works, they can share it not just with teachers down the hall, but all over the country online. It is time to return to the days when American students got the best education in the world, because when they graduate from high school, technical school, or college, that is who they will be competing with for jobs. You shouldn't be teaching or testing students on their skills for rote memorization, because knowledge is changing so quickly that tomorrow's workers will need to anticipate what is coming next and be able to transfer their skills to meet new challenges. Kids need to learn how to use their knowledge to think carefully, critically, and creatively to solve new problems and new dilemmas. And if that's what we're teaching, that is what we ought to be testing to make sure that we are succeeding and to help kids, schools, and districts that are struggling. The Mathematics Florida Standards are comprised of two sets of standards: the Standards for Mathematical Practice and the Content Standards. The Standards for Mathematical Practice provide a solid foundation that helps to anchor your child's learning of the mathematics. The Content Standards change each year as students progress through the grade levels, which allows for continual growth and the development of mathematicians. The combination of both the Content Standards and the Standards for Mathematical Practice build a solid foundation of the Mathematics Florida Standards. The Standards for Mathematical Practice are the backbone for building understanding in mathematics. These standards are consistent throughout all grade levels, K through 12. As your child progresses through the grades, they will refine these mathematical behaviors. The bolded print identifies the skill that your child is using as they learn their grade level standards. The content standards are composed of the following domains for each grade level. Notice that the domain, counting and cardinality, is only found in kindergarten. Operations and algebraic thinking, numbers and operations in base 10, measurement data and geometry are consistent across all grade levels. In third grade, the domain numbers and operations fractions is introduced. Today, the key to success, whether you're a mechanic called in to fix something you've never seen before, or a medical professional dealing with an outbreak of some new disease, is the ability to transfer your skills from one domain to the next. Education needs to give our kids core knowledge and an ability to apply that knowledge in real-world settings. The above chart illustrates this idea. Listed in each grade level are the critical areas that will be addressed during the school year. This provides a global overview of the critical content taught in each grade level. Every child develops at his or her own pace. It is important to stay in contact with your child's teacher to further support their understanding of mathematics. In 5th grade, students will add and subtract fractions with unlike denominators. Your child will be able to explain how to find a common unit to add and subtract fractions through strategies such as models or using multiples to find a common denominator. To add the fractions with unlike denominators, such as 2/3 and 1/6, a student could see that each of the thirds could be cut into 2 equal pieces to create a common unit or denominator of 6. Your child can then see that our renamed fraction 4/6 will combine with 1/6 to give them a total of 5/6. Students will also add and subtract decimals to the hundredths place. Using a set of base 10 blocks, your child can model how they use place value to add and subtract decimal values just as they would with whole numbers. For example, if we use a flat here to represent a whole number, each column or rod would be a tenth of that whole, and each square on the flat would represent 1/100th of the flat. By combining the rods and units in addition, or removing them from their model in subtraction, your child can show how they can use the decimal place values to add and subtract. In 5th grade, students will apply their previous understanding of how to multiply and divide whole numbers to the multiplication and division of fractions. Your child knows that multiplication involves creating equal groups of an amount from previous grade levels. They could use a model to demonstrate how to create equal groups. If they split a whole rectangle into 4 equal sections or fourths, they can only create 4 fourths out of 1 whole. Therefore, 2 wholes would create 8 groups of 1/4. A student can also see that if we split the 2 wholes into fourths, that there would be 8 groups of 1/4 in 2 wholes. In grade 5, students will multiply and divide decimals to the hundredths place. For example, students may use base 10 blocks to show how 1 6/10 can be split equally into groups of 4/10. Through using a model, your child can demonstrate that 1 6/10 is equivalent to and can be regrouped as 16/10. Next, using their basic division facts, your child can show that the 16/10 split into groups of 4/10 will give them 4 groups. They will also do this with multiplication by creating 4 groups and fill each equally with 4/10. the student is able to prove that there are 16 tenths which can be regrouped as one whole and 6 extra tenths. In 5th grade, students will find the volume of a right rectangular prism using whole number lengths of the sides. Students will find the area of the base of the figure and multiply it by the number of layers or height to determine the cubic units that fill the space that the prism occupies. The whole point of setting standards for what children ought to know at the end of each year is so we know when kids have met those standards and are ready to move on, and so we can flag problems early, so kids don't fall further behind each year and eventually give up. With that being said, it is important to remember that every child develops at his or her own pace. It is also equally important to stay in contact with your child's teacher to further support their understanding of mathematics. In other words, you, the parent, are the biggest advocate for your child. This publication was made possible by a grant from Carnegie Corporation of New York. The statements made and views expressed are solely the responsibility of the author.